One night, a father was driving with his daughter on low-traffic roads outside the city. They had spent the whole day with the girl's mother, who was hospitalized, and were returning home at night. The girl, listening to the sound of raindrops on the roof of the car, fell asleep and began to take a nap. Suddenly a loud voice was heard. The father struggled with the steering wheel so as not to lose control of the tires, but the car slipped on a rainy road and hit a rock wall. The father saw the girl who was injured in the accident. He then got out of the car to assess the condition of the car. Both tires had exploded in front of the car and the right fender had collapsed when it hit the wall, but other parts of the car were not badly damaged. "We must have crossed something on the road," said the father, trying to explain the situation to his daughter. "Whatever it was, it punctured a pair of tires. Can you fix it, Dad?" the girl asked, trembling from the shock of the accident. "No," replied the father, shaking his head in a negative sign. "Unfortunately, I only have one spare tire. I have to go back to the city and find one to tow the car. The city is not far from here. You can wait in the car." "Okay," the girl said, not wanting to. "But please do not take too long." The man could see the fear in his daughter's eyes. "Sit here," he told his daughter as he locked the car door. "I will be back as soon as I can." The daughter watched her father in the mirror in front of the car, who was walking down the road with tired steps in the rain until he hid from the darkness of the night. An hour had passed since his father left. The girl wondered why her father had not returned after all this time. He was very worried because his father had to go back by then. At the same time, he looked in the front mirror of the car and saw an icon moving toward the car from a distance. The girl thought that person was her father, but when he turned his head to take a closer look, he realized that the man was a stranger. The man was wearing a sari and a thick beard covering his face. He was holding something large in his left hand that swung back and forth with each step. There was something about the stranger that made the girl nervous. As the man approached the car, the girl stared at the rear window and narrowed her eyes to see better. In the dim light of the road, the girl realized that the man was holding something tightly in his right hand. A big, sharp knife. The frightened little girl's brain started working fast. Locked both front doors. Then he jumped on the back seat and locked the back doors as well. When he raised his head, he saw the stranger standing and seemed to be staring straight at him. Suddenly, the man raised his hand and the girl screamed from the bottom of her heart. In his left hand was his father's severed head. The girl was screaming in a row. He could not control himself. Her heart was pounding madly in her chest and she was trying hard to breathe. His father's face was still terrified. His mouth was open, the pupil of his eye was turned upwards, and only the whites of his eyes were visible. When the stranger got into the car, he stuck his face in the car window and stared at the girl with crazy red eyes. The man's hair was messy and dirty. There were also deep scars on his face. For a moment, the man stood there under the rain, grinning like a madman. Then he reached into his pocket, pulled something out, and slowly raised his hand. The little girl's car switch was in her hand. A mother buys a doll from a second-hand shop for her daughter, a nursing student, as a birthday present. The girl named Donna loved the doll very much and kept Angie in her shared apartment with her friend, but soon the strange nature of the doll became clear to them and strange things happened to them. Annabelle's doll initially did small things, such as waving her arms and falling from a chair to the ground, which Donna and Angie could justify. But little by little, these movements increased to the point that the puppet did things that were far from justified, and it did not take long for things to get out of control. Lou, Dina, and Angie's closest friend, was pessimistic about the doll and felt that the doll had been possessed by a ghost, but Angie and Dina did not listen to him and said that it was just a doll. Until the story gets scarier than Donna imagines. Dina and Angie sometimes encountered moving furniture and sometimes found letters in childish handwriting. The note had a different message: help Lou and help us. But they did not think it was the doll's job until the day Dina noticed the blood on the doll's arms. The doll was on the bed instead, but the red spots on her arms caught Dina's eye. He was coming out. The puppet case became serious, and the girls enlisted the help of a soul-summoning medium. The body of a girl named Annabelle Higgins is buried in the basement of their apartment, medium told them after a ghost meeting. Annabelle's soul became interested in the doll when she saw it and conquered it. The girls were heartbroken to hear the Annabelle story, and decided to keep the doll, but a more frightening story happened to them when they had to seek help again. One day their friend Lou came to their house when he woke up at night, but he could not move. Lou looked around the room but saw nothing, looked down and saw Annabelle standing at his feet, the doll slowly starting to rise from he kicks her, passes over her chest, and then the doll's arms lock around her neck and begin to suffocate her. Lou loses consciousness after this incident, and the next day he regains consciousness and does not know if this incident was a terrible nightmare or in fact happened to him, but the next day something happens that he realizes that the doll is terrible. While Lou was in Angie's room, he heard noises from Dona's room while Dina was not at home at all. Lou thinks someone has entered the house without permission, but realizes that the voice belonged to Annabelle. Lou goes to Dina's room and sees the doll on a chair instead of on the bed. When Lou tries to walk towards the doll, her whole body suddenly becomes paralyzed and the feeling of paralysis in the chest area increases. Lou looks down at his feet and sees 7 paws, 3 vertical strokes, and 4 horizontal strokes. Lou looks around in horror, but sees no one there, and the only thing that comes to mind is Annabelle. The scratches on Lou's body could be seen by everyone, but the scratches healed strangely in 2 days and left no trace while the claws were all hot. Once again, the girls thought of a solution, and this time they enlisted the help of a priest named Hagan's father. But the priest said to them, "This is a matter of spirits and needs more power." They contacted Ed and Lauren, a couple who were like ghost hunters, and found out that the doll had an evil and inhuman spirit. The couple declared that the doll was not possessed, but was controlled by a spirit, because inanimate objects could not be possessed. Warren's actions were timely, because if Annabelle continued to work, she could have killed one of the members of that house. The couple elevated the spirituality of the home with words that included 7 pages of sentences that were positive in nature and prevented the devil from entering the home. They took Annabelle's doll to their museum for safekeeping and poured holy water on it to prevent the dolls from attacking, because the family says that when they took the doll with them, he tried to brake the car and deflected the steering wheel, but when the holy water poured on it seems to have worked. Annabelle's doll is now housed in the Ed and Lauren Warren Museum in a glass box with a "Do Not Open" warning.